Hello. Somebody else too.
Probably so. You ready?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for being here. Welcome to Third Space Reading Room. I am Dr. Siobhan Nash, and at Third Space Action Lab, I'm the project director for the Partnership for Equitable and Resilient Communities in Cleveland. We call ourselves the Cleveland Freedom Dreams Coalition. Tonight, you're here for a freedom lecture hosted by the Cleveland Freedom Dreams Coalition. We're a coalition of organizations that work to help redesign our black and brown communities in Cleveland. So if you want to learn more, you can visit the Third Space Action Lab website. But we really want to appreciate everyone for being here, specifically our panelists and our moderator. Thank you all for being here. I think we're in for a real good one tonight, talking about black agriculture, urban ag, and the title of this freedom lecture is Sow Liberation. We welcome you to continue to enjoy your foods and eats, drinks in the back. Engage in this conversation. This is a freedom lecture, so feel free to engage, ask questions during the Q&A time. But I'm going to turn it over to them because y'all didn't come to hear me. Thank y'all. Y'all can introduce yourselves how y'all want.
All right. I am Bianca Butts. I am a native daughter of Cleveland, born and bred in the Buckeye neighborhood, and cut my teeth in community development on the east side of Cleveland. So really happy to be here and be in conversation with two of my friends, actually. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Sam?
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see all of these beautiful faces in the room today. My name is Samira Malone, but everybody calls me Sam. I do that in reverence of my grandfather, who I was named after. I, too, am a daughter of Cleveland. I grew up in a central neighborhood. Also got my chops working in community development. Previously was the executive director of the Cleveland Tree Coalition. Currently doing some green infrastructure, urban forestry work for cities across the country with Urban Sustainability Directors Network. So I've had the chance to work in all things trees and green infrastructure from Cleveland to cities across the country. So I'm really excited to be in conversation with you guys today.
What's up, family? How y'all feeling? All right, my name's Tim Lewis. It's always weird talking about myself. Born and raised in Cleveland. I like cool green stuff. I like fashion. I like fun, and I like family.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we'll keep it simple. No long introduction.
I think it's safe to say that all three of us up here are tree huggers, tree lovers. And so that's kind of the spirit of the conversation that we're going to have today. And I'm just going to jump right into it, if that's okay with you guys. I feel like when I think about community development, too often it's often just thought about as construction instead of cultivation. But when we connect with the land through urban agriculture and urban forestry and other aspects of green infrastructure, we're really tapping into cultural traditions that move us beyond projects and towards repair and resilience. That's my thought. And so I'm really excited to share this space with you guys and Tim and Sam today, and really explore what it looks like to sow liberation through the land and to listen to the soil to honor our lineage and imagine a freer and greater and greener future together. So my first question is, can you share with us your relationship with land and how that first began? Specifically, I want to know who are some of the elders or ancestors or individuals that whose wisdom continues to shape how you move through this work.
I'm so glad that you added the caveat of like elders and ancestors, because I would definitely say that's what drove my pathway into this. It's kind of like a two-pronged. One, I've always had a healthy love and reverence for the natural environment. I come from people who even before the evil that was transatlantic chattel slavery, we had been land stewards, right? And so that duty and that responsibility had been impressed upon me very early. I also come from a lineage of folks who made it their duty to be public servants. My grandmother and my mother are both CMSD educators, retired. My grandfather was a civil servant for the state of Ohio, and so they always impressed upon me both the duty to take care of the land and the people, and to help take the gifts that we have to advance the collective as far as we can get. And so I would definitely say some of my earliest fond memories is my grandmother was really big on the garden. My grandparents kept a very beautiful garden. Spent a lot of times playing outside. I definitely say that outdoors is where I seek peace. I hike a lot. I play outside a lot like a kid still. And so it's just very natural and aligning and purposeful that I've been able to craft the work that I get to do on a daily basis around those things and that duty and being able to carry that out. Yeah.
For me, I would probably say my grandparents, first time I seen a garden in the projects off of 55th and Unwin. So my grandparents coming from my grandmother from Tiffin, Georgia, coming up and turning my grandfather on from Cleveland, to gardening and farming in the backyard. I'm talking about maybe about a little 20-foot plot, cantaloupes, cucumbers. My cousin Damien Forche, that really put the battery in my back, and turned the light on for me to understand how to be in position to make transition of just not just being stuck in one space, but really getting back to being a visionary. When I say turning that light on for me, I think I got to a point where I was just more so stuck on tangible touches, you know what I'm saying, and watching, what we created down there with 4 generations down at Red All Green Partnership, definitely, put the battery in my back to just bigger and better. So I would say my grandparents and then Damien.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I think about both of your fields, urban ag, urban forestry, they're deeply rooted in Black land traditions and stewardship. And how do you see your work carrying that legacy forward?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I always say in terms of urban forestry work and just green infrastructure work in general, I know a lot of times we delve and dive into the science, into the data of things, but I believe having the highest quality environment is a human right. Not only is it a human right, but as I stated before, we have such a symbiotic relationship with the natural environment. Like, it's not a separate. Unfortunately, because of the conditions in which we live in, those two things have been divorced. But it's intrinsic to our survival and to our thriving. So some of the work that I get a chance to do to help fortify Black and brown neighborhoods through urban forestry, whether it's for cooling purposes, whether it's for cutting back flooding, the economic benefits of trees, I believe wholeheartedly people have and deserve access to the highest quality environment. And so I take a great deal of pride in being able to lend my gifts and abilities to see those things actualized.
For me, I would just say simply just like being able to work side by side with family. It ain't easy. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like just being able to see the transition of 4 generations, have a conversation where we got the lineage in it, but just how do you take what was already introduced and amplify it? So making sure that, my older cousins and my younger cousin, Aharon and his son, so you already got generation number 5 getting worked on and getting, exposure. So that exposure and that expansion is just that simple for me, just being able to open up and enlighten people about urban agriculture, not even just urban agriculture, but agriculture period. You know what I'm saying? And understanding the work that Sam does and how can I take what she does and implement that into what we do down at the farm. So making sure that all green spaces are covered and just being able to not only comprehend, but just being able to put it into action and understand the language, I feel like is a big duty.
You hit a perfect transition for me in terms of understanding the language. And you mentioned something like when we often talk about green infrastructure, it's the science of, or people assume the science. When I think about green infrastructure, it's like the living systems that help cities breathe and cool and thrive. And so certainly urban ag and urban forestry are really critical elements of that work. How do you see practice of urban forestry and urban ag as essentials to building resilient, healthy, and liberated communities?
So I want to start it off super locally contextual, right? Mm-hmm. So like when we think about trees, as you mentioned, is like a critical part of the living system that we're in. And we're all a part of this living system. It's not just the plants and it's not just the grass. We are a part of this system. with trees being what I call the lungs of the environment. They serve this really interesting role of like all of these different intersections of climate resiliency. So when you think about in a city like Cleveland, where we have on average about an 18% tree canopy across the entire city, and then we take a look at the neighborhood, then we take a look at the numbers by neighborhood, and that's where the real devastating story happens, right? We have anywhere between the lowest tree canopy neighborhood in the city of Cleveland is anywhere between 4.5 and 6%. And so when you look at that number, you're like, oh, wow, that's such a small amount of trees, but there's such a devastating impact that that has on the environment and has on our quality of life, right? We think about trees, not only just the ecological benefits that they provide a city, like stormwater sequestration, pollution cleansing, helping to mitigate and bring down temperatures, they also have impacts on our quality of life. When you think about neighborhoods like Central, when you think about neighborhoods like Glenville that have disproportionate percentages of cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, all of these compounding effects, then you get a chance to really evaluate how much not having these green assets are really impinging upon our quality of life, which again ties back to the fact that this is an innate human right.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely intersections with public health and economic development. Tim, you have any thoughts on that in terms of how urban ag is really critical in building resilient communities?
I mean, I think it's resilient in the space of just giving people some good work ethic. You can't cheat it. You know what I'm saying? Any farmer or anybody who's planted something before, it's going to take, you showing up every day. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. We don't have practices that allow you to see results, but at the same time that break you at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely an exchange when you talk about, just showing up, being consistent, not only being consistent, but understanding how you have to change in that process. Like, you put that seed into the ground, while that thing is waiting to germinate, you going through a whole process. Mm-hmm. Being able to show up, weed, water, that same thing that you're doing to that plant and those crops need to be done to yourself. So I think it's just the exposure of consistency, and not only consistency, but the transformation that happens as this thing grows. You're growing and evolving as you're putting food into the ground, or just stewardship of the ground.
Yeah. Your comments made me think about something one of our good friends, Julian Kahn, once said to me about it's not just about planting the seed, it's about creating the proper conditions for growth. Yeah. And that typically starts with the soil. So if we're thinking about a lot of the things that we're talking about in relation to urban ag, urban forestry, green infrastructure, it's about creating the proper conditions for growth. Mm-hmm. So I want to move into some things. When you hear kind of the description of our conversation today, when you hear food, farming, and freedom are inseparable. Food, farming, and freedom are inseparable. What comes up for you personally or professionally? And specifically, Tim, something you said to me a couple weeks ago is what is the importance of disruption and discomfort in this work when we think about how food, farming, and freedom are inseparable?
I mean, the first thing that I think of is really you can see and identify out of those three what we're missing. So it's easy to, put your finger on the problem and try to see not the best way, because I think that's the other thing that we struggle with as a community sometimes, is always trying to push our personal agenda on how the best practice, instead of just really sitting in community and having conversations and trying to see, okay, how many different ways can we, really take it this, instead of just one person being that way. So I think within that space is just more so being able just to identify, what's going on within the practice of comprehension, and not only comprehension, but how are you communicating the work that has to be done in that space. So a lot of times we show up ready just to push our own personal agenda, and really, instead of just sitting in community and trying to see what community is saying, because we really don't come up with a solution until we really know how to just listen to each other. So within that freedom, I mean, the climate we in now, whoever's feeding is going to be the one leading people right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I put a post up yesterday, that new PP kit looked like prayer, protection, you know what I'm saying, and produce. Mm-hmm. So in that space that we in now, it's a clear or you can just see what we're missing at as a community.
Absolutely. The new PPP package. And Sam, for you, I would love to hear you chime in on this in terms of the policy aspect. How is, can you speak about how policy funding and urban planning impacts our ability to have liberation-focused land in our work?
Absolutely. You actually set up a real good segue with
Yeah.
that. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about right now is this context that we're in, where we're barreling towards, and people are already starving, but we're barreling towards a devastation with starvation, with the potential, with this loss of SNAP, right? And one of the things that I just want to say and level set in this moment is, like, starvation is a tool of fascism. Starvation is a tool of oppression, and to keep people in fear and to keep people subordinate. And so when you think about what the SNAP program has always been, you cannot talk about food scarcity, food insecurity, and bridging that is through this social services program without talking about the history of agriculture, because SNAP is embedded in the Farm Bill, right? It actually makes up 3/4 of the Farm Bill. And so people often will demonize recipients of SNAP and say, well, you need to work harder, that there's some morality issue with you that you have poor access to food. But it's actually, the program was not just founded to help subsidize people's costs to be able to afford food. It was also helped to subsidize the agriculture industry. And also, even more insidiously, Black farmers have disproportionately not been able to benefit from these subsidies that roll out of these programs. Black farmers, much like Black people across the collective, have been the canaries in the coal mine when it comes to talking about food insecurity and food scarcity. So when I think about food and freedom, those two are so intrinsically linked with one another, because we are living in a time in which we are watching people literally debate whether or not people are worthy to have access to food. And it's just so insidious, but it is also, again, a policy influence, right? So thinking about the earliest forms of the SNAP program, that was born out of the Great Depression and the policies that were rolled down through FDR. But it really got codified in policy through the 1964 SNAP Act, which was passed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, which is what we know as food stamps today, right? And so thinking about the fact that now we are dealing with people not having access to high quality food, and you also are dealing with farmers that are now being completely disinvested, and again, continuing to exacerbate the harm that happens to Black farmers, because they historically have not had access to the same funding mechanisms to produce. It makes places like Riddle and the work that Black farmers and Black agriculturalists are doing as an act of resistance. It makes it an act of resistance, because we are living in a world that wishes to starve us.
When we think about investments, you just made me think about investments when you talked about farmers, and then Tim, I can't help but look at your shirt, All Farmers Matter. Like, what does that really look like? How can investments in urban forestry and urban agriculture really transform not just how neighborhoods look, but how they live? Because when we're talking about these topics, we're talking about impacts on trees, gardens, and farm, but we're really talking about who gets access to safety, shade, and nourishment. So what do those investment looks like, and can you tie that into All Farmers Matter?
What that investment looks like for anybody that's out here that's been farming or producing, the first investment is time, people showing up, bodies. Being able to create an atmosphere where people see the importance of why they're showing up. Not only that, but understanding how to quantify that. Really, for anybody that is doing something on a small scale or beginner scale, the power of 15 people showing up on one Saturday would almost probably put that farmer up probably about 5 or 6 days worth of work. So the time investment, not only the time investment, but the consistency is showing up where you're actually finding something that speaks to you within that space, not pushing a certain agenda. In that space where we're at right now, you don't have to necessarily be getting your hands dirty. It's social media, it's marketing tools, it's anything that you do naturally you can tie to sustainable practices that can really be able to not only create that expansion but more exposure. And that's why I created that All Farmers Matters, because what I was looking at was just the sense of being stuck in urban agriculture, right? So for the last 2 years, I've been finding us in the Appalachian Mountains and Athens, Ohio, West Virginia, and connecting those dots. So All Farmers Matter tagline is from the city blocks to the mountaintops. All Farmers Matter, because what's happening is over the course of these probably last 10 years, the language within a lot of these policies and these grants almost have us fighting like Crips and Bloods, to the point where we hate on each other so much at these conferences, the only thing we can think about is just our direct need,
Right.
opposed to like, how do we supersede that and really show up as a collective?
Absolutely.
So they done already used the policies in some way to make us pick and choose on how hard we ride just for our personal space instead of the whole collective. So one thing that I've been just really trying to do with the brand and then within the work is just understand some of the challenges that they have in the Appalachian Mountains, and then vice versa, and sharing these resources and these practices, because at the end of the day, all farmers matter from the strength of just, we're not doing a good job of connecting and showing up. I think when we came out of COVID, everybody got so comfortable with the Zoom calls, don't nobody pull up no more. You know what I'm saying? So they feel like posting is like the new version of helping out in the field, and you can't replace that work. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I appreciate the reposts, you know what I'm saying? But literally bodies is probably the biggest investment that we can make to support, because the work that we get done at Riddall can only amplify more farmers.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And not only that, once again, it ties back into me having to get more understanding of the work that Sam does, because I have yet to been to a conference where you have water conservation, soil conservation, land conservation, urban forestry, national parks.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Metro parks, all in one space. You know what I'm saying? To have a shared conversation on how do we all complement each other and support each other. So I feel like, honestly, it's really just doing what we're doing today, showing up in community, and not only just showing up in community, but asking the questions on how can I show up, not just for the projects that we're doing, but just in totality. What are the projects that's going on that I might be able to lend services to?
Absolutely. That time, and then thinking about an investment and thinking about the collective over competition is a huge investment. What about you, Sam? You have any thoughts about what investments really can help move this work?
I mean, of course, I echo the sentiment of us showing up in collectivism, especially as we're thinking about not only the ways in which language is weaponized in both policy and grant opportunity, but we are seeing a very strategic and very intentional rollback in investments in projects that are focusing on Black communities and Black people. So there is going to be a certain amount of ownership and due diligence and duty and buy-in that we're just going to have to collectively have with each other to keep things sustained and afloat, and that's not foreign to Black people. This ain't our first rodeo. We have had to keep ourselves afloat. We have had to be resilient in ways that are even inhumane, but letting still, we are the testament of the sacrifice that our ancestors have made for us to be here. And again, it is our duty and our responsibility to be able to carry those things out for the next generation. But I would definitely say, from the perspective of urban forestry, I go back and forth about saying, like, do the traditional channels of reaching out to your council person and reaching, because those are all dutiful and beneficial things to do, but we also have to understand that we're not dealing with the traditional levers of government right now. And so, like Tim said, I like to echo being equipped and armed with knowledge to be able to go out and have real impactful transformational conversation with folks in your community about the importance of these things, not just for the sake of, seeing them actualized immediately, but understanding that it is all of our collective waste that is going to push things forward. So the more that you might not view yourself as an environmentalist, but you're somebody who has to intersect with the in the natural environment every single day, right? And so being equipped and being able to talk about those things, being able to collectively activate, because we are in a constant struggle for liberation. And so the more equipped we are with knowledge to be able to advocate for ourselves, to be informed about these things, the better I I would definitely say an informed, educated mind is dangerous, which is why they don't want us to be.
I feel like as we've talked about, the times that we're living in, whether it's from a funding perspective or just the political climate, you can't help but think about some of the historical trauma that we have to navigate and some of the present things that we have to move through as that's tied to land and labor. How are you still holding space for joy and healing and connection in this work as we move towards, or as we are in a constant state of liberation, striving for that?
I would definitely say, like I said earlier in my introduction, I always find space to play. I always find ways to connect to my inner child. I think that thinking about my own constant internal work with liberation requires me to do that. And that's what keeps me very motivated. That keeps me in a space of levity. I also have a deep connection with my ancestors, and appreciate and glean from the foundation that they laid. And I understand my duty and my responsibility as an ancestor one day too. And so that kind of, in the midst of always thinking about that this is a fight, that keeps me both empowered and aligned, because it's something that we share in common, even though I didn't get a chance to meet some of them.
Right.
Some of them I did. That's our through line. And so that kind of keeps me going. Yeah.
What about you, Tim? Joy, connection.
I would say for me, it's just it's really family. Like even on our worst day, I'm gonna keep referencing that because it ain't easy. You know what I'm saying? Literally working with family, and not only that, but showing up for community while you working with family, and being able to extend what family looks like. So when I'm saying family, I'm just not just talking about immediate family. I'm talking about like us, those that come down. Once you volunteer, that first time you extended family now.
Yeah.
So being able to understand, the balance of just, I'm gonna keep going back to it, that exposure, seeing somebody learn something by coming down to the farm, and then not only that, watching the next generation. So went to Maryland Sterling with my cousin Aharon, and watching him pour into the next generation. Them kids gave him hell, and I was laughing because he's trying to teach them something that's not consistent or supported within the school system.
Yeah.
But the short, brief time that he had those kids once we can narrow down, I would say like 2 or 3 things in the space where no matter if you're coming from a farm on the east side or west side, we have the same language. It's the same flow. I feel like a lot of times in the space where we show up, once again, not really hearing the intents or hearing the hearts of what's being said, or learning how to really value the energy. Because these times right here, everybody made a choice to be here. So in this choice of being here, I'm always challenging people really to make a request, put your petition out there, because you never know what can happen. And really, for me, the profit is within the people. Because if you can fill a room up, if you can get bodies to show up, it's no different than what the Amish do. They show up, support, build, and they're not waiting for grant money. You feel what I'm saying? I feel like if we can just get back to building our communities and our tribes out and taking care of ourselves and really showing that skill set of what we have, that's just like ground zero of that investment to getting back to those practices that'll help. And the call of action of just like, well, you don't have to be, once again, a farmer. You can document, you can administrative work, exposure, whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be the actual labor, but the labor of love in the project, of the process of us getting to know each other, and how do we really show up as community, not community of this ward or that ward, but really show up and just really share information, knowledge, and really the passion to just like progress forward.
You keep setting me up for such a good segue. Thank you. But that's because we one band, one sound up here. One of the things that I also want to echo is that to build upon that is saviorism isn't going to save us, in the fact that we can't rely upon one person or one sole entity to be just the sole driving force. That's how things get undermined. That's how things are. The transference of knowledge and responsibility of power doesn't need to be centralized. And I think that we all have a collective and individual responsibility. I say always assess in your individual life where are the ways in which you can be a steward of your environment, not just these massive. When we think about environment, we think about these massive park systems in the metro parks. Like, no, your backyard, your front yard, your neighbor's yard, whether that is picking up trash, whether that is helping somebody in your block who doesn't have the ability to tidy up or mow, or any of those simple things that we think are simple and they're not. They are a collective action that keeps us all fortified and understanding that we're in this thing together with each other. Again, to the point that you might not be planting a tree, you might not be doing agricultural work, but again, there is the different ways that you can contribute to advancing that. Tim, I loved what you had just said. You said a little while back about those who are producing produce right now are the ones who are really kind of like who we're looking to, right? And so I think that looking for opportunities to be able to source locally as much as possible. I will always plug, because I'm also a Riddle board member, there is an amazing Black-owned farmers market in Maple Heights. And when we are living in a day and age, and when the Amazons and the Whole Foods and the major corporations are doing everything that they can to make sure that we do not have access to high-quality food, we have places where we can go and seek refuge and get that and spend money with our people. And so I say calling in and taking those opportunities, taking those assessments to really think about how you are integrating sustainability in your everyday life and your everyday practices, your spending practices, everything are critical.
Absolutely. I feel like we've kind of already hit on my last question before I wanted to get us into some space for Q&A for our audience to kind of participate in this dialogue. But I was really just going to ask, like, how do we get everyday community members to sow seeds of liberation block by block, garden by garden? Where should they begin? But we've kind of already hit on some of those points. But I think it's incumbent upon us not to think about, again, only thinking about environmental interventions as the big systems like the metro parks and big, large developments, but your backyard, your front yard, your side yard are all opportunities to really get involved and participate in this work. So I would love to open it up to our audience and get some questions or some comments into the conversation, if there are things that you would like to pose so that we can get some other voices in the room. I saw your hand first. Yep, absolutely.
Sam, you talked a lot about SNAP and the Farm Bill, and that system has been in place for like 100 years now, and there's so much that goes into that infrastructure, that goes into that lobby for big ag, and I'm wondering, it's so devastating that SNAP has been cut, and I'm wondering what any of you see as a potential for the future, what you would see as an ideal for that system instead of what has been there, and especially now that we don't.
That's a really great question. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I've been thinking about what does it mean once the dust of devastation settles of the loss of SNAP, and how people are going to have to band together to feed each other. Of course, the natural systems of food pantries, and again, local gardens, local farms, regional farms being suppliers of hyper local produce that can be also cost effective and efficient. I also have been thinking a lot, I've been leaning a lot back to policy that was born out of the Great Depression, right? And one of those pieces of policy that I haven't heard in this conversation about food scarcity is public model grocery stores. I think that is a pathway forward for us to both make this linkage to regional farmers and other national farmers, to be able to source food that can go into these markets, and that can also be price contained, right? We've gotten away from that. There's still some remnants of public markets in the United States, but not to the degree, because the corporatization of grocery stores, the corporatization of agriculture is a huge business. And we're seeing right now what it means when you have a government attack on food source and trying to monopolize food source to make it unattainable for the everyday person. So I think that we have to really get back to the bones of some of those socialist policies. And not only just policies, but actions that really help to fortify people's ability to have access to just the basic everyday needs. But that is going to take a great deal of organizing, and it's not impossible. We've seen it happen. We have the blueprint for it. And again, things like these opportunities to have conversation, to really take a piece of information and spark it, and somebody in this room might take it and run with it, right? All of us collectively help you run with it. I think is important, but that's been been one of the things that's on my top of mind, thinking about addressing food scarcity.
Got one right here.
Whichever one of our panelists answer first, just to repeat the question for our online audience.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
So mine's more so of a comment than a question. But one thing I've enjoyed from this conversation is priority and prioritization coming up. So right now I'm the head gardener and grounds lead for Collin Friends Community Garden. So I'm one of the heavy hitters on gardening right now. And I know that one thing that's been in our community's conversation as well is, especially with everything with food apartheid and of course SNAP being revoked, which, is that I bring into the conversation of that while our priorities now or in the past might not be misguided, I will say that now is a very big time to ask what our priorities are. And I've been really enjoying this conversation, especially with okay, so how can we make sure that everyone has a role, right? If it's not physical labor, if it goes down to, again, marketing or checking in with your people doing physical labor, because it is a lot.
It's labor.
60 yards in one day of soil, and I was
Absolutely.
Like, oh. And I would just say that I'm happy that this is where all of our mindsets are right now. That this, I think we're finally all collectively saying, no, we see that the priority has to change, and how are we able to breed these conversations and bring the vocabulary or the mindset with everyone to say we can get on board with this. We just have to find our role and what we want the future to look like. So I appreciate this conversation tonight because I know it put a fire underneath me. So.
And thank you for all the work that you do.
Yeah, and thank you just again for our audience online. That comment was about what are our priorities and how are we thinking about our roles as it relates to this work. So prioritization, thank you so much for that. Anybody else, our cousins in the audience?
Hello, I'm Shamira, and this is my daughter Zahara. She's like a green thumb. I'm not.
All right, Zahara,
So I saw this on the internet, and I brought her here because I want her to be around people.
Yes.
This is your legacy.
Absolutely.
So I try to get her in spaces where people can pour into her. So she goes to the metro parks a lot, and we are aware of where all she's been there a couple of times. But are there different programs outside of school programs that you go into or anything like that that can help her build her experience as a gardener? She says she's a country girl in the city, so I'm just trying to make sure. Well, what do you say? She would love to live on the farm. She's being very shy now, but she likes to network. Unfortunately, she's being shy. I told her don't be shy.
It's okay.
Miss the opportunity, but remember the face. But just trying to find like programs to put her in so she's in the spaces that she needs to be, so she can one day be an expert or in the field and well enthusiastic about the things that she needs to do.
So chat, the question was programming. I'm gonna be honest, I get excited for those type of comments because instead of putting her in a program, let's create her a program.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? We're in a room full of community, and I'm a firm believer of letting the kids teach us what it is, and we just get behind them and rally them. I'm all about creating, the logos, the infrastructure, whatever it is that she has a passion for, and then I'm going to refer her to Farmer Ben. You feel what I'm saying? So my younger cousin, so being able to come down there and inviting her down there to see what role that she wants to take, because sustainability is a big thing. Not even just the farming aspect of it, but her understanding the language and being able to get with her peers and connect. So I'm a firm believer of just like, let's create programs for our babies not to be in workforce development, but running workforce development. So I'm going to get his number out. I'm going to set his number out. I'm going to set my number out, and then anything we can do to support her, because I feel like that's where it starts, with us being able to just see what she's interested in and help cultivate that. Then, maybe she might start a green version of the Girl Scouts or something like that. But really being able to go into that next level of while she has a passion, we're obligated to help fan that. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that wildfire catches and really just push. So I'll get with y'all after, give me my contact and give Farmer Ben's contact. But the group of kids, what's the age you're working with? 14 to 18. So we need another version up under that, because it has to get younger and younger, and then getting kids used to being outside and connecting, because one thing that's going to happen is when they come down there, we don't grow DiGiorno's and Hot Pockets at the farm, right? So this is a good process and a good moment where I feel like instead of us focusing on how heavy it is, we done been in it already. So we got to stop acting like this is new. It's just bracing ourselves and really showing up and doing what we say we're going to do for each other to make sure support is felt. Not only support, but the more hands that we have planting and growing, then we can produce at a higher level where we don't even have to leave the community to get what we need, but really just pouring into that younger generation. So I'm excited for it, just the opportunity.
And I was going to say there are a few Black women-led organizations that focus specifically with young Black girls around environment, getting exposed to the great outdoors and environment. One is SIAT, Erica and Ebony Hood, amazing sisters.
See at the top is that acronym?
Yep, see at the top, my bad. We just throw around alphabet soup sometimes. I would say Journey on Yonder with Kim Woodford, where she does hikes and exposure with young kids to the great outdoors. I will also say Queen I Am. We actually did, you and Queen I Am, so we just did a hike fundraiser for them back in September. So I loved, oh my God, I'd love to see the Queen Aya babies. So those are some programs that I would definitely, and afterwards, let's connect so I can put you in connection with them.
I would just mention a couple more organic connects. Whitney
Yep,
Long
Whitney Long
Jones.
Jones.
They do youth education around environmental justice, and then I'm not sure if Green Corps still exists.
With it Holder?
Yeah.
That program, I believe, got cut.
Yeah. And then Youth Opportunities Unlimited has a couple of programs embedded in their youth workforce summer opportunities that focus on urban gardening and rain barrel production. So you get some climate resilience and sustainability context there. But I'm all with Tim. The programs doesn't have to be something that's exist or that's under an organization. It could be what your curiosity dictates, what you want to learn, because there are people and opportunities who will pour directly into you. So your program is what you want it to be. Look, what else, cousins? Okay, there we go.
My name is Akil. I have a comment. It goes into a story more recently happened to me this year that really changed my entire political career. And I really do appreciate the program on black agriculture because it's really pivotal. You know, Malcolm X said, land is the basis of independence and revolution and freedom.
Ashe.
Without land, there's nothing. So I'm part of Malcolm X grassroots movement. So I ended up traveling to Jackson, Mississippi. I ended up taking my grandparents with me. My grandmother's from Centerville, Mississippi, which is a little bit closer to Louisiana. So I expected to go down, not really learning too much about my family. I mean, I was already kind of expecting to meet my grandmother's family because I was doing a little bit of genealogy work, but I ended up going down and learning way more and changing my own, who I was before I even went down there, my own perspective, you know. So I went down there, I learned a little bit more about in Jackson, but it wasn't until I got to Centerville in Macomb, Mississippi, that kind of changed everything. My grandmother was a daughter of a sharecropper. So as soon as she was born, as most black children when they were born in Mississippi, during that time period, you were a laborer for your parents at the sharecropping field. Matter of fact, even though that the schools were designed and registered for black people to do labor on those fields. Yep. You know, there was no pushing forward to school, you're going to be a forced agricultural labor force, you know, post-slavery, but it's kind of the same as slavery. Sure. While I was down there, my uncle and then my other aunties were down there. They own big lots of land, and like the land is wild. It's wild boars, rattlesnakes, and things like that. Matter of fact, one of the houses my great-grandparents made back in like 1925 is still up. So I had a chance to walk around it and do things like that. And then also look at land development that they were doing on that land as well, you know, and also understand kind of why, like, my grandmother, who is in the rural side of Toledo, she literally gardens all day. Like, literally, if it's a good day, she's outside, you know what I mean? And so I ended up kind of coming back and kind of wanting to develop a green thumb, just realizing that, because I also came back and I read the book Rooted, which is really good. If people want to learn more.
I was just thinking you're giving me Bria Baker vibes with this whole comment.
You know what I mean? This is why we're here. You know, and like in the book, she really discusses like agriculture when black people migrated from the south to the north. They literally stripped away almost our ability to develop land. And the thing is about the agricultural thing, one of my favorite words ever, you know, as a new African nationalist, but even just as a person, is self-determination and sovereignty. That was one thing that was very brutal to our existence and survival, was self-determination and somewhat sovereignty. Because even then, what she says in the book Rooted, what my grandmother said, you know, was that if black people, if we all owned a little bit of land, you know what I mean, let's just say we are in rural Mississippi at this time, if you don't have nothing to eat, someone else was going to give you something to eat. And that was the basis of our survival. But you see that through years of existing within the urbanization of capital and, you know, the northern, these metropolitan cities, I've seen that it has been stripped away our collective thought for a hyper-individual thought that I got out the mud, you got figured out. You know what I mean? So I say this to say, my question is, what do you think in Cleveland, and specifically Ohio, like, you know, because Ohio versus Mississippi, which even has erupted through the state oppression, like in Ohio, in Cleveland specific, like, how do you think we can develop some form of anatomy and sovereignty? You know, right now we're in Glenville. Back in the day, like one of my elders that really mentored me was Sababa Akili, who was one of the founders of AfroSet. And one of the big things that they talked about was making Glenville tough a sovereign area. You know, and the brother, you know, I had a good friend of mine named Devin Branch. He ran for mayor East Cleveland. He really saw that, like, East Cleveland is really in the Midwest. It's an all-black city. You know what I mean? I'm not campaigning that we all go run to East Cleveland. God, you know what I mean? But, like, you know what I mean? We come to more understanding. But, like, the idea of sovereignty within these big metropolitans where capital is constantly being moved from neighborhood to neighborhood, where black populations that were usually larger over here are becoming much bigger in Warrensville and Bedford. What do you think we should, how do we combat this? How do we stay sovereign? How do we maintain our anatomy existing within the city of Cleveland or just Ohio in general?
Thank you for that. That was a beautiful comment and lengthy question in there, but it's really, I want to try to sum it up for our listeners. Like, how do we think about the capitalistic structures that we're in, and how do we create sovereignty in our communities? Did I capture that? And I think I would say, to start chewing away at this answer, when I think about the structures that we're operating in terms of capitalistic structures, I don't think we can think about our currency as only being dollar bills, and you touched on this earlier. Like, the currency for our collective thought can't just be money. We have to operate under other things as currency to create the sovereignty which you described in your commentary. So I'd love to leave some space for other.
Yeah, I mean, your comment, your question, there's so much through line as you were sitting and talking. It made me reflect upon my family lineage as well. We own the land that my ancestors were freed on in Alabama, and have had a chance to make a Mecca back there a few times. But to bring us back to your question around sovereignty, I think one of the pieces that we're thinking about in terms of infrastructure would be, right now we're in the city of Cleveland where there's over 40,000 plus vacant parcels. Right? Like, there is a wealth of land that is underneath either city or county control. What does it look like for us to collectively come together and develop land trusts so that we have agency and autonomy and self-determination over what becomes of that land?
For me, it's going to be somewhat simple, but one of the hardest things that we struggle with in the community. Knowing the difference between somebody that's called to do the work and somebody that's compelled to do the work. You know what I'm saying? Because the people that are compelled sometimes get a little over anxious and start to make it the new hustle. You know what I'm saying? The ones that are called, that are showing up, that might not have time to put it on Instagram, that they actually work, and we need amplified voices of those in the community to spread that awareness and shed that light on what's going on, and not only that, but making sure that we don't bury each other in the process of policy. So I feel like it's really just knowing the difference between, and really, like I said, holding those up that are called to do the work versus compelled. Now, if you compel, take that same energy to support that person that's called. That called is with consistency. So those organizations that always show up, not only for the community, but this is probably one of the hardest things to do in the times that we're in, especially when you don't see instant gratification. So everything within agriculture alone is almost like that waiting process. So that's why you have to really slow down and enjoy the process of getting processed. So it's really, for me, simply literally learning the difference between those who are called to do the work and those who are compelled, and making sure that we don't cross those lines up, and we learn how to support those, just to be able to just, once again, show value within each other. Because I go into a lot of rooms that don't look nothing like this, and the first thing that they're looking at is what qualifies me to be in the room versus, me showing up to support. So they'd rather question the support based off of the calling. Like, it chose me. I wouldn't have never in a million years chose this. I'll be honest. You know what I'm saying? I come from a retail background, being cute, not having to touch or get dirty, but to understand that it was a calling on my life. And what I had to understand is, how do we sow the seeds in the people so that people can understand how important they are to the bigger piece of the puzzle. That's what I struggle with when we started to build out, what we're doing down at Red All. it got bigger than me because it is bigger than me, but it helped me over the years identify my role in this small system on how do I stay consistent and not cheat my process, because as long as I'm in position, that allows me to leave room for somebody else to really take their position. What happens is a lot of people that get compelled want to sit everywhere. Like I know people that got 4 and 5 farm plots and it's just them. And it's like, why? You know what I'm saying? So they start treating it like the housing market and trying to flip it, but literally just holding space for that one thing that you do very well and letting everybody fall into place by you being consistent.
Thank you again for sharing your family lineage and everything that you discovered. So insightful. Who else has the mic next? I'll repeat it.
Shout out to this community of Black people out in Sow Liberation. In Glenville specifically, we have the Eastside Market, which before its rebuilding was a market. And there were vendors, all of that fun stuff. When it got rebuilt, a lot of people assumed that that's a return to that same sort of model where we would have vendors, fresh produce, fresher foods than what the grocery store actually
Sure.
provides. I'm curious to know from your perspectives, like what could the impact on both the community and providers of the food be if they implement that back into this neighborhood specifically, into the east side of Cleveland?
So if the East Side Market is brought back into Glenville, what could the impact be on the neighborhood and vendors in that space?
I think it touches a little bit upon what I was mentioning earlier about public markets. It creates this like circular economy, right? Where you may have an onslaught of local farmers who are growing produce and can have vendors in the market where they are selling that fresh produce to people, high quality produce, but then also the dollar that is being circulated there is staying within the community, is being captured and not outsourced. I think about the opportunity again to continue to fortify not only farmers and individuals through high quality produce in our neighborhoods on a local and regional level, but connecting to our farmers, all farmers in the South, right? I think that having a pipeline or a supply chain direct to source begins to create these circles of a hyper-local economy that can sustain itself. And so I think that if we were to radically reimagine what that space looks like at the East Side Market, it would be first starting creating that connecting that first circle of local supply where you have people from the community who are providing the produce for people from the community to sustain and live off of. And they know that that's a place that they can go to and trust that they're being fed righteous food things that are going to sustain them. I hope that answers your question a bit.
I think that creates a system to connect to what you were talking about earlier, creating sovereignty. So if we create this circular economy, we're not just creating a space, we're creating a space that improves our people, infrastructure, and a neighborhood. So again, you're connecting your neighbor to that farmer and that source of food. They know where it's coming from. It's not you're just going to Dave's or Giant Eagle or insert whatever national chain grocery store. You're going to Farmer Ben. You're going to get collards from Carol. And you know that you're taking those home and feeding your grandmother and your family. And I think that breeds deeper connection than just going to a chain grocery store. And it's in your backyard. I think about what got me drawn into community development work is listening to stories of my mother and my grandfather and my grandmother talk about how they didn't used to have to leave Buckeye to go to get anything. They could get their groceries. They could go to the dry cleaners. They could get the car repaired. They could go to the cobbler. They could do everything unless they wanted to take a family trip to Higbee's and be fancy. They could do everything within 4 to 5 square blocks. And I don't believe that I have to go to Timbuktu to access fresh food. I should be able to get that in my backyard or in an adjacent community. I think that's what Village is really about.
And you also have agency over the crops and their growth. Like when we're thinking about insert big box store, you are going and buying produce with the hopes that it is not pumped full.
I'm gonna just simply say, like, y'all have another opportunity. You know how black people be. We go to Trader Joe's and Whole Foods, we brag, and we need to brag on the same energy as the East Side Market. Put the East Side Market on TikTok. You know what I'm saying? So it's really so simple for me because I feel like we done got so flamboyant with shopping outside our community. Like, that's the thing to do. You know what I'm saying? So how do we put the money back in? By creating an experience. So having an opportunity to actually have a conversation with the person that actually grew whatever you're about to consume. Not only that, but having the workshops be within those spaces too. So just to make more of a attraction. So the same college that you want to eat for Thanksgiving, let's get with y'all in early April and have those conversations on how do we plan them. So having the community find access and opportunity to get engaged on what they're going to consume anyway. So I think really just simplifying it and really using this tool of social media and just bragging about it and getting back on the pride of circulating that dollar within our own community again.
We got space for one or two more? Two more.
Hey everybody, my name is Katarina. I'm a reproductive justice organizer, and I wanted just to start with a comment that agriculture is essential to the tenets of reproductive justice, especially as it pertains to raising the families that we choose to have in healthy, safe, sustainable environments. And also, it is crucial to the point that's already been made, bodily autonomy. And so right now, I'm one of the stewards of Collinwood Friends Community Garden. And right now, we are looking at what does it look like for us to go from being a garden into a farm. And doing so in a way that still is rooted in mutual aid, not charity, right? So how do we promote a sense of collective ownership and increase the sense of social responsibility with the garden space? And so the plot that we have is it's like maybe 4 or 5 different parcels. With this government shutdown and things like that, that's kind of a barrier with us starting, you know, some of our paperwork with doing so. And then we're also facing challenges with the city of Cleveland, which is our land lease in general. So I wanted to know from you all, like, what does support look like for other gardens like ourselves to take that next step of becoming more of a farm and having that rooted in community care.
So I know you and your team been over there grinding, right? So what I like to always do is acknowledge what y'all already done, right? Because I think a lot of times that's the part that gets skipped over, staying consistent. Not only staying consistent, but staying rooted in the why. So when it comes to being able to support or take that next transition, is really trying to see, like, what does your vision call for and how many of those pieces do you got in place already. So what would be an ideal number of people to show up to help you all out on a week, and then being able to scale, not only scale, but once again, we got to get practical now, because that money, is getting tighter and tighter. So even if it's nothing but you having more space to grow outside the community, just to bring it back, you know what I'm saying, and offering space for that to happen, different crops that we can help support, or something that somebody has already grown but just don't have an avenue to get rid of it. Like, we really have to get back to just the practical, because that scale up really comes with when we start to believe in each other through the process. I'm a firm believer of it gotta be us. You know what I'm saying? I hear these grant dollars and I see them, and I've been fortunate and and seeing the impact of what that money can do, but I can also say that I've been unfortunate in seeing what that money can do. You know what I'm saying? I liked it better when we starved together, to be honest with you, because it was more sincere. You feel what I'm saying? We didn't forget the why when we starving and we busting down a personal pan pizza. You know what I'm saying? I might not get no pizza, but save me that crust. So it really got to be back in that space of us being able to really share resources at a value system where if I know we might have a shard or excess amount of greens and y'all need that produce, hey, we got this extra over here, y'all can come pick it up at no cost, because we got to start taking care of each other. So when you say a farm, I think the farm is just more so in the concept of how they view it. You're already a farmer because you done fed somebody. You know what I'm saying? I think the other thing is if it's just paperwork and getting you a number and access, we offer the 5-month commercial class down at Rideau. I can get you a scholarship. You know what I'm saying? Because my whole thing is I'm a firm believer of just acknowledging what you already did. So the whole course might not be for you, but that one specific moment of working with, you know, Central State and all these other entities to make sure y'all get registered, getting you bumped through the line, because like I said, y'all been grinding for a minute and staying at it and staying consistent. So I'm offering that as an opportunity just to see, and we just have conversations, because I think the other thing is the pedestal of being one of the first to do something. I'm always in community, so I hear the good and bad. You know, so that's when I made that comment about being called versus compelled. We question too much of people that's already doing the work or paid the price. So I'm never confused about why I'm in position. I just learned how to just ignore the extra stuff and really just focus on the work and keep the work working. So whatever it is from that next level that you see, let's sit down and just talk about what that looks like for you and the vision of you and the team, but just being able to scale to be considered a farm. But I'm telling y'all already a farm because y'all did the hard part already. Y'all stayed down. So it's just more so now, if we're talking about the funding, for me, not for everybody, it's literally how can we bring more bodies over there and bring more exposure, then that funding comes. So one thing I know with these bigger corporations, like even like we'll use Nestle right now, even in transition with what they're going through, they're still trying to find ways to connect to community and still advocate. So I got some relationships over there where we might be able to just add value and benefit to what y'all doing.
I was going to say also, just in addition to that, I think that where you may not have the opportunity or even the desire that you find to grow large crops, there's still an opportunity to produce through agroforestry. So there are grants and funding opportunities to plant trees that can be a source of sustenance. There was a really cool project that happened in the city of Cleveland probably like a decade or so ago, and I wonder where this data is housed, but there was a database of all of the fruit-bearing trees in the public right-of-way, because that is produce that is being produced annually with no real place. It's either not being harvested and just being falling to waste, or you have a couple people who are harvesting, but it's really not meeting the hands that it really could benefit and impact. So thinking about the ways in which you can incorporate tree plantings, not only from the ecological benefits that it serves at a garden, but also for the food sustainability benefits that it provides as well.
Thank you for that. And just to edify what that question was, it was how do we go from being considered a garden to a farm? So those were great insights and answers.
Kat, you know we could talk about urban forestry grants. I'll write one for you.
One more. We got space for one more before we kind of wrap up. Right behind you, Kat.
My name is Isabella. I'm a community organizer, and I'm also a student of sustainable agriculture, and I'm from Puerto Rico. And I just really want to say that I really appreciate like this whole conversation, because like that's why I got into agriculture, is food sovereignty, freedom, like. I talk about this, I want to connect this to Puerto Rico too, because since we were colonized by the United States, they took away a lot of our land. They took away our land, our ability to do agriculture to grow our own food. So now, like more than 80% of the food that we eat is imported from the United States. They profit from us not being able to grow our own food. And so I think like being like this whole project and like us talking about agriculture and growing our own food is so important, And I want to tie this to Palestine as well. Like their land was taken away from them, their ability to do agriculture, to grow their own food, even access to water. Even the little land they got, they can't even grow their own food there. And I also want to tie this to even the food that we eat here in the United States. Like, where does it come from? Like, you look at Chiquita banana, they destabilized and cooed like governments in Latin America for cheap bananas. You know, like a lot of the food that we eat too, who grows it, who harvests it, like undocumented immigrants too, it comes from exploitation. And like, we don't see that on purpose. You know, like the food just appears on our grocery stores. And we don't see who makes it, who brings it from place to place, who packages it, and you know. And I think that loss of connection also, you know, you control the food, you control the people. You know, so be like food sovereign. But yeah, like farming is like the most important profession. You know, it's a profession, it's a job, and you know, farmers aren't seen as like a real job. It's not seen as a real profession. And I think like bringing that forward, showing that it's an option, is so important. Like teaching the youth about agriculture and like our communities, that we can grow this food ourselves, is so important. And I really appreciate like what y'all are doing, putting forward this conversation. And I also had a quick question as well, because I'm very interested in agroforestry, and I would love to know, like, do you have any resources or anywhere like that we could learn more about it?
Yes, absolutely.
Before we touch on the resources, just want to amplify what that question was. And thank you for bringing Palestine, Puerto Rico into this conversation and into this space as we're talking about liberation. And so the question was, what resources are there around agroforestry?
I was going to say, yes, I do have resources, but I really appreciate you elevating the fact that this foundation, that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, and that is very much so rooted in exploitation of people through labor, and exploitation of the land for production. I would absolutely love to talk to you about agroforestry and some of the resources that are available out there to help support seeing some of these like food forests, which is something that communities across the country are talking about right now. Like, what does it look like for us to not only use urban forestry as a strategy for climate resiliency, but also as a strategy to bridge the gap for food security? So let's make sure that we connect so I can,
Do you have any final thoughts, Tim? I am just, you think that's a lot for us having this conversation, but I am so grateful for everybody that is present here, to listen, to share energy in this space. I'm grateful that we were able to connect in this way and just sit in front of you as friends and as cousins and really just talk about being Black and doing green stuff. Like, I think that's really important to be able to have these types of lectures. So really grateful to Third Space Action Lab for hosting this Freedom Lecture series, and just want to toss it over to our host to see if there's any other things we need to do to close out. But just wanted to extend immense amount of gratitude for your presence and your energy on this topic. This has been phenomenal.
You good. Thank y'all. One more clap for them. Y'all. I'm full. I feel good. I called Sam. I emailed Sam. I said, Sam, I got this idea. She was like, I got you. And then this happened. So I'm just appreciative of y'all being in community with each other, now in community with me and us and all of us being together for this. I appreciate y'all expertise and passion on this topic and y'all work. I want to underscore capital, all that. Thank y'all for being here. It's more food in the back. I want to thank Third Space Reading Room team, specifically Evelyn and Mordecai, who are the co-founders of Third Space Action Lab. Really appreciate them for giving this legs. Like, hey, yeah, do it. It's a good idea. So I really leadership means a thing. So appreciate that. I hope y'all got something. Make sure y'all make these connections like they said and continue to enjoy each other. I'm going to turn the music back on and feel free to have drinks and food in the back. Thank y'all for being here tonight.